on Texas football. It's time for Talkin' Ball, brought to you by our friend John Donovan at longhornwealth.net. Jerry Hamilton, Bobby Burton here with you for about 45 minutes tonight. We're going to take your questions every Monday night. We call it Talkin' Ball for a reason. You ask the questions, Jerry and I, or bring up the topics. Jerry and I try to comment there. But before we get to that tonight, Jerry, Steve Sarkisian was at the podium today talking about what went on this past week and what he's been getting the team ready for this coming week. Tell folks what you heard at the press conference earlier today.
Yeah, I mean, look, I thought the first thing is how much, and I talked about this with CJ, is a guy that's been an OC at USC. He's been a head coach. He's been the OC for Alabama. He has been in some amazing rivalry games, especially the Iron Bowl. I mean, Alabama and Auburn's had some unbelievable games. I think he was a part of a couple of those, right? So he has a real feel for college football history, not just through the eyes of somebody who loves the game, but from the eyes of somebody who's been in these rivalries as a coach, whether that's been a head coach or an OC. And I think the way he talks about the Texas OU game is with a real respect and admiration for the game and a real understanding of just how big this game is in the grand scheme of college football on an annual basis. That was my number one takeaway. Just real with his comments and thoughts. And I think it's because he's been on different games. And I think the big news for Texas fans was he said if the game was played today, not this was unexpected, Quinn Ewers would be the quarterback, but he's going to continue to monitor him throughout the week, make sure he's right where he needs to be come Saturday. But if the game was played today, he'd be the starting quarterback. And I don't think that surprised anybody. Didn't really speak a lot on other injuries. Said Jaden Blue had a really good week of work, the off week with Tashard Choice. Said he's moving really well in practice this morning. I think he feels a little more confident about the running back room health-wise, certainly than he has the last couple of weeks. I think the off week was big there. But I just thought, the amount of respect he has for this game really stands out to me. But at the same time, I think he knows he needs to win it this year.
Yeah, he absolutely does. I think that he does not want to be 1-3 against OU. And you know what? Then he goes on the road to both Arkansas and A&M as well later this year. You don't want to lose here. But you know what? I think that that's part of the equation with a rivalry game. You never know what it's going to be. Texas 14-point favorites in this game, Jerry. Yet there's not a single Texas fan that will tell you we're counting our chickens before they hatch in this one. It just doesn't work that way with this rivalry.
Yeah, I'll probably be proven wrong, but I think Texas is that much better, at least if the offensive line plays at a high level. But you have to go out and do it. I mean, that's the thing is I do think Texas is a significantly better team because of the offensive struggles and wide receiver injuries for Oklahoma. But the Texas offensive line, if they play like they did against Michigan, I think Oklahoma's front is negated at that point a little bit. Their biggest strength is negated, and I think Texas has a big advantage if that offensive line plays at a very high level. But we'll see. Anything can happen in these games.
Yeah, anything can, and anything does. And one of the things that I looked at a comment that I just agree with, Donald Britt had this to say, I'm always looking for a freshman running back to have a breakout game like seemed to happen with Edwin Simmons, Marcus Dupree, who else? Adrian Peterson, Butch Hadnot way back in the day had a breakout game against OU. There's been several. If that were to happen on Saturday, it might be OU's Taylor Tatum. The Longview native could end up being the best running back for OU, but that's not necessarily good news for the Longhorns. We'll see what that has to say and what we get into there a little bit later when we talk about what's going on with this game. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsor. That's John Donovan, President, Longhorn Wealth Management Group. John's a proud Texas life member whose wife and 6 siblings are also UT grads. John's a certified financial planner with more than 30 years of providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to Longhorn family and friends. Give John a shout, 972-707-4900, or go online, longhornwealth.net, to schedule a free 90-minute consultation. Again, it's free to any On Texas Football fan, longhornwealth.net, 972-707-4900. All right, let's get to the chat line, Jerry, if you don't mind, and we'll get going. Dan, I want to get your feeling on this, Jerry, because I'm one of those guys that think the young bucks at defensive end are going to have to provide some pass rush and some key. They got to corral Michael Hawkins, the freshman quarterback for OU, because his legs are so dangerous. Colton Vasek and Colin Simmons going to eat in Big D. Do you think the young defensive ends for Texas is going to show out on Saturday?
I actually think, I was going to bring this up, but we've talked about how running backs have been breakout players. I think Colin Simmons has a chance to be a national breakout player in 4 days. I think this game provides a different opportunity maybe than some in the past. Oklahoma's offensive line will have had to get a lot better in a hurry, because they faced some good players. They hadn't faced Colin Simmons off the edge this season. The closest thing is R. Mason Thomas in practice. But I actually could see this being a breakout, because the reality is Colin Simmons has been tremendous the last 4 games of this season, but the wide receivers are overshadowing all other freshmen in college football. Well, now Colin Simmons is on a national stage Saturday in one of the best rivalry games, if not the best, in college football. If he goes out and has a Mississippi State-like performance Saturday, he's going to vault onto the national scene like he has this season. So I think it's a huge opportunity for Simmons Saturday. I really do.
Okay. I think it is for all Longhorns. One of the things I like to say is, this game creates legends. It just does. And they also create little folk heroes almost. Right? You remember Chris Agbanaya and his big one game. He had a good year that year, but his run against OU opened up a lot of stuff. I look back at it, and those are the kind of plays and players that come to basically symbolize this rivalry. Kenneth Cassidy, this is a good one as well. What are y'all's all-time favorite Texas OU moments? Kenneth, I'm going to be blunt. I don't know that I have one. I have so many, and they all tell a different story for me. It could be literally, it could be anything from Johnny Walker catching a touchdown the first year I was a student at the University of Texas in the waning moments to win that game. It could be Stoney Clark at the goal line. It could be Jordan Shipley on a kick return, or Quan Cosby within that same game, annihilating Lindy Holmes. It could be Sam Ellinger, bringing his team back a little bit and outdueling Kyler Murray. I've just got so many that it's hard for me to just pick one. What about you, Jerry?
Yeah, so I think the singular play from a Texas fan standpoint in my years as an adult is the Quan Cosby block on Lindy Holmes in a weird way. And even though Jordan didn't score on that play, that play right there tells you a lot about the rivalry and just with the emotion and the physicality and the way this game is really played. I'll tell you one that's underrated was Casey Hampton. I think had a 4th and goal stop. And then Major Applewhite hit McGarity on 99-yarder the next play.
Yep.
That might have been as good a 2-play sequence as we've seen from a Texas perspective. But the biggest momentum play in my years again was Jordan Shipley kickoff return at 08, because that game was teetering a little bit at that point in time. That game was teetering. That could have gone the wrong way if you were thinking about the recent history of Mac Brown and Bob Stoops. People are like, oh gosh, here we go again. That kickoff return was one hell of a huge momentum play.
I got to say this. I'll add one more piece to it. I was thinking about best plays, most memorable plays. What about best coaching moves? I go back to that season and that game by Greg Davis to move Jordan Shipley into the slot.
Mm-hmm.
That may be the now. There's probably been some as it relates to defending the OU option through the years, right? Back in the 80s, 70s. But from an offense perspective, that was probably the best scheme change on game day that we've seen from a Longhorn coaching staff almost ever.
Yeah,
I would say, because it fundamentally changed that game.
Yeah.
So think about it, not just favorite moments, but favorite scheme changes or things. And maybe that's what, Texas or OU breaks out on Saturday as well. Something different that the other team really wasn't in line for. So something to consider.
Is the most underrated one Mike Leach dropping the fake play sheet in the tunnel?
That's a great one. That's a great on the bench, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey, Donald Britt, Sark talked into a mic with an LHN logo on it. Is Longhorn Network still around? Not the TV channel, but the traditional KLRN setup. It is actually still around. It is just now an app. So you have to download the app and you'll get certain things, but I don't know all about it, frankly. I check it out every so often, but you have to actually get the app. All right, let's ask this one from Specker 54. If we lose to OU and a freshman QB, I'll lose my mind. There's some there are some Longhorns that agree with you on that. Texas should have a distinct advantage with a third-year starting quarterback. But I'll tell you what, there have been heroes in this game. I remember a freshman quarterback that came in that had just came in the week before and got his first start against OU and led Texas to a victory, and that was James Brown, who has some similarities to Michael Hawkins, frankly. He got a lot of poise for a young player, got some ability to make people miss, and a winner. What do you think? If Michael Hawkins is able to beat this Texas team, that's going to be a problem for Texas the rest of this year and going forward.
Yeah, I would say that's true, and that probably means Texas turned the ball over. That means 3 straight games with multiple turnovers.
Yeah,
is the way I would have to see that one working out.
Fair. I mean, Texas has to be stingy with the ball against OU because you can't lose momentum there. Christian Calderon Denzer. Hookem, who's the starting RB versus Oklahoma? My pick is Trey Wisner, but Jerry, Steve Sarkisian maybe hinted at something different than that in today's press conference.
Yeah, so he didn't really come out and make a definitive statement on that. And like, I'm one that I don't think it really matters. I mean, those two guys are pretty much playing a lot anyways, and Jarrett Gibson is the third back. Sark said all those guys are going to play Saturday. So I'm not that big on who trots out first. I think Trey Wisner has some value in the run game against Oklahoma, especially early in this game. I think Jaden Blue has some real value in the short, quick passing game from the running back position. So I think it'll be how Steve Sarkisian plans to attack the early part of his script, is who probably runs out there first.
I think it's going to be Blue that starts. I do think we're going to get a healthy dose of Wisner and Jarrett Gibson throughout the game. That's just where I'm at this point. Hey, Jerry, you were on the road for recruiting this today. People want you to, Josie says, spill the beans. What places did you stop by today? One of those was Tyler Chapel Hill, and you produced this report for folks earlier today.
On Texas football here with Ricky Stewart, 4-star running back, Chapel Hill. Ricky, thoughts on the Horns this year, man? What you seen?
Man, bro, it's a lot of talent everywhere. You know, the QB was hurt. Arch Manny came in, stepped up as a good role model, played good. And then, all the running backs hurt, so a lot of people had to step in, be part of the team, and had to do their job.
Well, you being a running back, what have you seen from the backs you like? Jaden Blue, Trey Wisner, because you're a lot like Trey Wisner.
Jaden Blue, man, he just play hard, man. Knowing that his teammates out, he just coming to work hard every day for them. And then Trey Wisner, same thing, playing hard, man, being a good teammate, staying positive, and then they just keep winning, being 1-0 every week.
You said you're planning to go to the Texas OU game Saturday.
Oh, yes, sir.
Have you ever been to that game before?
Oh, yes, sir. I went last year.
You did go last year.
I went last year when OU came back.
What were your thoughts being at that stadium? That's crazy, right?
Man, I was like, it's wild. It was packed, loud in there. Man, Texas really should have won, but you know, everybody, like it's a game of football. Everybody, some teams have their good days, some teams don't. And OU, they just wanted them more.
Last thing I have for you, where are you better this year as a senior than you were as a junior?
This year I'll probably say my leadership.
Okay. All right, that's Ricky Stewart, 4-star running back committed to Texas.
All right,
Yeah,
Jared, what did you think of that?
So, one, on Ricky Stewart, I just want to say this, and Coach Reardon, head coach Jeff Reardon from Chapel Hill is going to be on Coffee and Football in the morning around 8:30 to talk more about Ricky. But the one thing about Ricky Stewart is, one, I had to do the video into the sun because of all the angles, so that's why he kept looking away, because the sun was right in his eyes. But he was throwing up all morning. He was sick last night. If you saw, he had this cut above his eye that he got in the Palestine game Friday, and they couldn't get it closed up, so he was in the medical tent half the game. Wanted to come back out for his teammates in that game. 99% of kids who are committed to a college that were throwing up all night in the morning and stayed home from school would not have showed up for practice. The guy's a winner. He's a leader. I think that's why you hear him talk about playing a role. You know, he is such a team guy. He's such a team-first guy. Today was the ultimate, because he could have stayed in bed. He could have been like, man, I just don't feel like it. It's 98 degrees. It's going to be 100 degrees on that field. He still came out and went through every play offensively, trying to help his team get ready for the Kilgore game Friday night. He didn't have to do that. He's committed to Texas. He's ranked a 4-star kid, but he did. And that's why kids like that will ultimately be successful. I don't even worry if that guy's going to be a good player at this point. You know he's going to be a good player by his actions. All he's got to do is stay healthy. He's going to maximize what he has. He's going to love the weight room. And by the way, he does graduate in December. We'll be in Austin in January. So him and James Simon will both be in Austin for spring practice. But I'll let Coach Reardon talk about that a little more tomorrow. But I'll give you guys a hint. He went 21 plus on the catapult last week. He's done it twice.
Miles per hour.
Yep. And that's before a college weight program.
Yep. One of the things we talked about, and I'll move on now back to the Texas OU, Jerry, is about what Texas' game plan might be for corralling Michael Hawkins at QB. This game feels like a game for Leonga Lafau. This from Aggie grad 0%er. What are your thoughts? I'm one of those guys that I don't necessarily agree with Leonga being a guy, because he doesn't have that speed, even though I think he's very sound technically. Is he the guy that you would want to spy Michael Hawkins with?
Yeah, I think he's more of the guy that plays the run in between the hash marks tremendously well, instinctively quick, downhill, decisive, reads the triangle really well. I think plays that are outside the hash where you have to open up your hips and turn and chase. I don't think that's necessarily a strength. I'm not saying he's slow. Everybody has areas they're stronger. That's more Maurice Blackwell's game to me. Maurice Blackwell is that guy for me. Heck, Ty Anthony Smith could even be that guy for me. Because Sark did talk about today playing 5 linebackers, included Ty Anthony in that discussion, which is interesting. So throughout the season. But yeah, I think Lafau against the run, that's against Taylor Tatum, Javonte Barnes is an important player. He's just going to keep getting better and better the more he plays between the hash marks, and he's already really good.
Yeah, I like him. I feel they got to find somebody else to play that role, I guess. Cody Jones asked this one. Jerry and Bobby, what's your biggest concerns for Texas going into this game? I saw this question earlier, and I wrote a couple things down. Turnovers and OU pass rush. Those are literally my two. Those are the things that OU does as well or better than anybody in the country right now. They create and cause turnovers, and they have a good pass rush. Jerry, what are your causes for concern or biggest concerns for the Longhorns?
That's it. I mean, it's often Texas offensive line versus Oklahoma defensive front and that pass rush. If Texas handles those guys, The speed's going to take over for the Texas wide receiver core. And if Quinn has time, he is going to hit those guys accurately. I think those are the two things if Sark has time to develop those plays, Oklahoma is talented as they are in the second. And now they're injured with Gentry Williams and the Cheetah Dolby out for the season. But if that offensive line handles the pass rush, I 100% agree. And turnovers, Texas has to be even in a turnover battle. I'm not sitting there saying they have to win it or be +2, but it can be 1-1, it can be 0-0, it could be 2-2, but they have to play it even. But the key for me is no turnovers on your side of the field. That, like the interception by Quinn last year in the first series, that set up massive momentum for Oklahoma. No turnovers on your end of the field in this game.
Okay. Here's one from Woodcrest that I think is huge too. Jerry and Bobby, does Venables not being able to steal signs play a huge factor this year versus Texas? I actually think it does play a factor and does play a role, but he can still steal them after 15 seconds. So any kind of checks or things like that, OU's going to probably be very quick to be able to do that. That's one of the things he prides himself on defense. I don't know how big a factor, but big enough. I mean, I think it certainly takes a value proposition out of Brent Venables' hands. What do you think, Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm not sure to what level, but I definitely agree with that. I think that has changed the game. Sark mentioned today having iPads has been very helpful for the offenses this year, and I think that's another part of it too. So not only is it more difficult to steal signs, it's also an advantage to the offense to have the iPads now.
Bobby Betronic came back with a good comment, and I agree with him here. James Brown had a lot of offensive talent around him. Hawkins does not, particularly on the offensive line. Like there are guys, if Deion Burks plays, he's going to be a receiver that goes in the first 2 or 3 rounds. Taylor Tatum, if he's healthy, will be a drafted player. Javonte Barnes is not a bad running back. They've got some guys. They don't have elite talent. The real issue with OU's offense, outside of having their top 5 receivers out for periods of time this year, has been their offensive line's issues. They have really not been a typical OU offensive front, and that has made all of their talent look worse. Like I'm not so sure that if OU's offensive line weren't its normal offensive line, that Jackson Arnold wouldn't still be the quarterback. I mean, if he – I know, Jerry.
I don't think he's a good player is my issue.
Yeah, he may not be, but he may have been able to be shielded enough to not show what kind of player he is under duress.
Yeah.
Because a lot of OU quarterbacks, historically, their offensive line has been good enough that they just sit back in the pocket a little bit, right? And maybe that's what they wanted out of Jackson Arnold, and they just don't have the offensive line to provide that, and that's one of the reasons why they're going with Michael Hawkins.
Yeah.
I mean, so Bobby Betronic, I agree with you. They don't have the elite talent around them. James Brown had some in that regard, but I'm telling you, I think it's the OU offensive line that's the real problem this year with that team.
And Tom Bregman, Jackson Arnold, Portal. Yes, I've heard this. I've heard he's not going to return, but we'll see. Everybody has to go through that process. And I'll say this: that's the toughest ask. But going back to that question, if Michael Hawkins beat Texas Saturday, people would lose their mind. I agree, because people will look at it like, oh, offensive line's not very good. Running backs are not as good as they have been at Oklahoma. They have a couple of good players, but they're not the level they used to have at Oklahoma when they could literally take over games at times. And the receivers are all hurt. Multiple guys out for the year, most of the year. If Deion Burks plays, he's not going to be close to 100%. So that's a tough ask for a freshman quarterback. If he had a big game against Texas, that would mean Texas either had busts defensively, in my opinion. I think gap integrity is huge in this game, or that he ends up being a special player, and that would be the worst thing of all for Texas in this series if that guy just ended up being a special player,
or a horrible game plan, or OU does something different that they haven't done all year. What that might be, I don't know. Maybe OU ends out running the option like Kansas did. I don't know if Michael Hawkins has ever done that in his life. Victor Santiago asked, better safety tandem, Peyton Bowen and Billy Bowman, or Michael Taff and Andrew Makuba? A lot of starts between three of those guys with Bowman, Taff, Makuba. Bowen is just now getting into the starting lineup for the Sooners. What do you think of that, Jerry? A lot of experience, certainly, among those four.
Yeah, I think maybe in the communication standpoint, Taff and Makuba. But I think in the talent standpoint, Bowman and Bowen are pretty significantly ahead. I think Peyton Bowen's an elite athlete back there playing safety. Elite.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Juan Garza has a super chat. This will be for the first time this year Texas plays on grass. That's true because Michigan plays on field turf. And, of course, Texas does as well. So we'll see what that means. Hopefully they've not let it grow too long when Texas, we think, enjoys a speed advantage over the Sooners at this point. Nathan Duck asked us this question. Hey, Bobby and Jerry, how many total yards will Texas put up against the OU defense? Longhorns averaging right at 500 yards a game, Jerry. Auburn put up like 450 plus, right, against the Sooners. What do you think about this Oklahoma defense against the Texas offense?
I think the goal should be 425 for Texas. If Texas puts up 425 of offense, then there's no way Oklahoma's going to score enough points to beat them.
Unless there's turnovers.
Unless there's turnovers.
I'm telling you now, the Sooners turn you over.
But 425 will produce points unless you turn it over in the red zone 3 times.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Texas effectively had 2 red zone turnovers last year. They had the interception picked by Billy Bowman, and then they had the 4th and 1 that they couldn't get across the goal line. So it's not unheard of. That is the one thing that this is going to have to be. If Texas, I will say this and add this, Sark has been much more effective. If you're looking for minor things to put in your cap about Texas this year compared to a year ago, Texas is much better in the red zone this year than a year ago. Texas scores touchdowns instead of field goals, different ball game. And it pushes Oklahoma a little bit more on offense. So as an early indicator of where this game is going, if Texas scores touchdowns instead of field goals, that can really play a big role, in my opinion, as well. All right, here we go. This one, Rick Amberguy, does the heat become a factor for OU's defense? If their offense is going 3 and out, I will add this. It looks like it's going to be game time temp is around 89 on Saturday. So it's down a little bit from what we've been accustomed to. But if their offense is going 3 and out, I don't know. I will say this. I've been to that game, 20 plus times. The players can look tired at times, but they always seem to find a little bit of extra energy in this game. Like I literally can only remember a couple times where Texas players or Oklahoma players just look dog tired. They always seem to have enough juice for one more play. Do you think heat, though, will be a factor if OU goes 3 and out a bunch, Jerry, and Texas can perhaps sustain some drives?
Yeah, I actually think so. I think that's just any game in the heat. So if you look at like a Tennessee-Arkansas game Saturday, if there was a scenario where one team had 44 plays of offense in the first half Saturday, that defense, whoever it is going to be tired. I don't care how much depth you have, all the talk about depth. If somebody runs 44 plays against you, you're going to be really tired. I don't care about how talented and how much depth you have. So if we get into a scenario where one team has a lot of snaps, considerably more, I think that was 44-25 in the first half, then I would expect whichever defense that is to have tongues dragging and hands on hips and knees now. I don't think there's any doubt.
Yeah, it'll happen. The question is, do they have enough juice?
Yeah.
Do they have enough juice?
By the way, that would mean Texas is having success running the football.
Yeah, or throwing it to the edges like they did against Michigan. Mm-hmm. I think that OU will play that smarter than Michigan did, frankly. So Texas is going to have to find a way to move that ball. All right, MJF, would 2 tight end sets help blocking schemes to prevent OU's penetration and force OU's linebackers to respect two tight ends may run routes, keeping them from flowing downhill so quickly. Look, Texas is going to use a lot of 12 personnel. They have all season. Gunnar Helm and Juan Davis will be those two guys primarily, and they will help on R. Mason Thomas, the sack leader for the Sooners, who has 6.5 sacks already this season, Jerry. He's one of the most underrated players in the country right now and really gets after it. But I firmly expect Texas to go a lot of two tight end looks. They did a year ago against OU as well.
I think R. Mason Thomas is a tough matchup for tall, long arm tackles. And I say that because he is 6'1.5". He understands leverage. He fires off low, and his second step may be lower than his first step at times. So he causes guys to bend at the waist a little bit, which is where you don't want to be to get to him at times. He is a tough matchup. Those a little bit undersized guys off the edge that have first, second, third step quickness, those guys can be really tough for today's day and age of bigger offensive linemen, taller guys. Because the last thing you want is to see your guy have to bend at the waist to get a hand on him and try to redirect somebody. And that I've seen that happen multiple times with our Mason Thomas, a typical Florida kid who was ranked a high 3, low 4 because he was too short. But look at him now.
All right, Back 80 Outdoors asks a nice question here. What do you think the Texas offense needs to do to execute against the OU defense? And what does our defense need to do? Pressure the quarterback? I think that, and Brian Robeson said this today, the Texas defense this morning on Coffee and Football, they don't need to just pressure the quarterback. They need to be disciplined while doing it. So there's a difference just getting quick pressure on the quarterback and making him get rid of it quickly. Michael Hawkins isn't necessarily going to get rid of the ball quickly. He's going to look to extend plays by using his athleticism. So you have to be disciplined in your rush lanes. Right, Jerry? I mean, that is a big piece of the puzzle for Texas. And I think if they can keep Michael Hawkins corralled and keep the OU run game in check, I think Texas is going to have a lot of success. I do suspect OU will hit one or two big plays. They have some fast receivers. They have Michael Hawkins has a big arm, even if it's not the most accurate at all times. And he has some terrific wheels. He pulled off a 50-something yard run against Auburn as well. He's a really good runner. They may hit one or two big plays against Texas, but I think Texas defense overall is going to have success. The bigger question is, what does Texas offense need to do to execute against the OU defense? I mean, they need to get the passing game going, and they need to be able to run the ball with some effectiveness. They don't have to run for 5 and 6 yards a carry, but they need to have some effectiveness running the football. Last year, Texas was able to do that a little bit against OU and pass the ball as well. Quinn Ewers famously got on that run. I think was he one time 18 in a row or something like that, passing. But it still wasn't enough because the Texas defense didn't do its job. I think the Texas defense is going to be okay on Saturday. This OU defense is improved from a year ago. So what does that mean for Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, so I think look, you know what Sark's going to do? He's going to throw it horizontally to make those D linemen turn and chase. Linebackers turn because linebackers are really good for Oklahoma, and they're big. They're tough against the run. So you make those guys run, then you run at them. Make them run, then you run at them. Throw it outside, maybe run an outside zone the other way. That's what Sark's going to do. And the question is, how much of toll does that take over the course of the game for the Oklahoma defense? And if it's similar to Michigan, it definitely took a toll on Michigan because Texas started running downhill on them more effectively than I think anybody thought headed into that game. So that horizontal passing attack to set up the downhill run, it does get to those defensive players. It makes them tired. It makes the linebackers false step at times just enough, maybe, right? Just with their eyes. Maybe not even false step, but maybe their eyes, right? Following the motion, following the eye candy. You know what Sark's going to do. The question is, what's Oklahoma's level of their ability to execute defensively without mistakes against that? Because we know what Sark's going to do to them.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Sark gets the screen game going a little bit too against the Sooners. Sooners a very disciplined defense overall, so you got to come at them from multiple angles. Their linebacker group is as good as Texas will play this year.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Oreo, can we take some time to give Tom Herman credit for his stellar defensive tackle recruiting? Huge part of Sark's success is turning these Tom players that went undrafted free agents into draft picks. There's no doubt about that. Oscar Giles is the defensive line coach for the Longhorns, and he struck gold about 3 years in a row. That has led to what's happened. Now, the problem is we got to get caught up on the defensive line, and that's what they're trying to do in recruiting right now. But Herman and or Oscar Giles does seriously deserve some real credit for that, in my opinion. Jerry, a question here for you that I think is pretty good as well. And I think it's kind of interesting because I saw this on Friday night and laughed when I kind of snickered when I saw you in the stands, or not in the stands, but on the sidelines. Loba Bread saw the video of Jerry hanging with Sark and Blake Gideon on Friday. Was Jonah pointing to you or the coaching staff? LOL.
No.
How well did Jonah play?
Yeah, so for people that didn't see that, the first point was the Sark, the second one was the Gideon. That's why the first one went left and the second one went right. I was standing in the middle of that group of people, which Jermaine Anderson, one of the Texas City forward, the current Texas City DC, was over there, as well as I believe Marquise Tuiasosopo, the Rice assistant, who obviously has long-term ties to Sark. Jonah played. That may have been the best game I've seen him play, whether on huddle. I know Manley had big game, but look, Port Arthur Memorial, that was a huge district game. And that was a game that people had been pointing to that Galveston Ball would probably lose. I had questions if Ball would stand up on the interior, but it didn't even matter in that game. I mean, Jonah had a 95-yard kickoff. At some point, some people are going to stop kicking to him. He had a 95-yard kickoff return. He had another catch and run for a touchdown. He made the first two plays of the game, tackling first two tackles of the game, I should say, on plays where he's playing in the middle of the field and the tackle was outside the hashes towards the numbers. He made the first two tackles of the game. Then he had the interception right there. Jonah played a tremendous football game. And, 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in the stands talking to somebody in his circle, and they mentioned how he's just more locked in this year. And that's kind of the way I see it. And I think when you're locked in, what happens, and not that he wasn't a locked-in player, it's just a maturation process. It wasn't somebody saying, oh, he didn't really care last year. That's not what it is. It's about the maturity. It's that continuing to mature as a football player. You have more confidence from year to year, and you're really locked in on both sides of the ball. And that's kind of what I've seen. I've not seen him play 3 times, and I went to Port Arthur to see their guys to their juniors because I was debating going there to Caney, and I went south. But that locked in, I think, has led to even more physical plays from the safety position too. I think he's reading it and he's reacting. He just is a really focused football player right now. I'll tell you a little update from that game, though, in talking to some people. Looks like he'll play baseball in the spring at Texas, and it's kind of maybe sit in on the meetings, not go through spring football practice. We'll see if that changes. This is October 7th that we're talking about this. But right now, spring baseball, sit in on defensive meetings when he can, learn the playbook, learn the defense, learn the scheme, and then be ready to roll for football practice in August. So that looks like that's the plan right now. We'll see if that changes.
Super chat here from Jared Fortner. Thank you so much, Jared. I know that Hawkins isn't Caleb Williams. That's true. But I'm glad there's tape to game plan on Hawkins, and we aren't going to be the first to find out how athletic he is on a whim, like Caleb Williams after benching Rattler. I completely agree with this because you can't game plan for the kind of athleticism a guy like Michael Hawkins has, or even a Caleb Williams when he came off the bench. Williams, a much more refined passer earlier in his career than Hawkins, though. But there is some similarity there where at least you have tape on the guy now, right, Jerry?
Yeah, no doubt. And look, I mean, I get where that's going. You can't even compare the two, obviously, because of the teams they were on. But yeah, there's no doubt about it. Texas has film on Michael Hawkins. By the way, this is a thing people may not really know if they didn't follow recruiting really closely. A.J. Milwee went to Allen. Texas looked at Michael Hawkins. This wasn't a guy that didn't get looks from colleges. Okay, his dad's Michael Hawkins Sr. that played at Oklahoma and in the NFL corner. But Texas went and took a look at Michael Hawkins. So it wasn't a guy that people thought was void of talent now. He was looked at by a lot of major programs. So my point in saying that is Texas knows about Michael Hawkins. They actually studied his high school tape on Huddle to see how good they thought he was. Then A.J. Milwee went to watch him in person. And now they have some college tape of him as well. And they probably talked to the Allen staff, maybe even Kevin Murray, who's trained him for years, just to get a feel for him. So they're not going in blind on this one for sure.
Rick Averguy says, is Ryan Wingo 100%? The answer to that is yes, from what I'm being told. He's over whatever happened in that game. He did return in the Mississippi State game after that injury, by the way. Jerry or Bobby, this from Wayne Oldham, 210. God forbid this happens, but what happens if Juan Davis goes out? Who comes in for him, and how much does that change the offense? I think it changes your inside running game.
Yeah.
Without question, because Juan Davis is the guy they like blocking out of that H-pack role on the interior, kind of that wham block. And
it also may change your plan for our Mason Thomas.
Yeah.
For a little chip helper.
Yeah, absolutely. It could. There's no doubt about that. Britt Rasco, do you think OU has prepped since last year, a la Texas versus Alabama? Maybe. I mean, look, I think that both teams, I've never been to a Texas versus OU game where both coaching staffs didn't have a little something extra in some way, shape, or form. Now, I was disappointed woefully in Mac Brown in that regard for about 5 years in a row because he didn't seem to have anything extra. Ultimately, he came up with some, and we talked about that earlier. But I think that you have to treat this game differently, and coaches have to treat it that way, Jerry, because it is different. I mean, you can try to make this another game if you want to, but if you do, you're wrong.
Right.
It's just different.
Now, and I think both these coaches know. Venables 100% lived it, and I think Sark, it's kind of what I was getting at earlier when we first started, is talking about how he talked about the game and the rivalry. He knows it. Anybody that's lived Alabama-Auburn as a coach, they know it.
Or USC, UCLA, USC, Notre Dame.
Yeah, he knows it. I mean, look, I think both these coaches 100% understand what this is.
Yeah, it's bragging rights. It really is, and blood and guts. All right. Burnt Orange Horn, this is another good one. Where is Malik Ogbo? I'm not so sure that Malik might not be redshirting this year. We've not seen that two tight end package at all this entire year for the Longhorns. I kind of wonder it's because Texas hasn't seen the three high safety look much this year either, right? That they were seeing so frequently in the Big 12. Not a lot of SEC teams run it. Now, I will say this, Arkansas ran quite a bit of it against Tennessee on Saturday, and Vanderbilt runs quite a bit of it. So maybe they will. Kelly Horns Up says, does OU have the depth that Texas has? I think they probably have similar depth on defense. I do not think they have the depth on offense.
Yeah.
Texas. You agree with that, Jerry?
100% agree. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I mean, they got issues on the offensive line depth-wise.
Gotcha.
So if it look, Jake's Majors goes out last year, and that was a big blow. Sark did talk about that this morning. But Connor Robertson came in and had a good game. Consider that's his first real game action of his life at Texas. OU's on either center 2 or 3 right now, as is Georgia, by the way. See where they're at next week. But Oklahoma has real depth issues on the offensive line due to injury. Guys that are already out, have been out. They can't sustain much more.
All right, I want to take this minute before we get back to questions here. We have time for about 5 or 6 more questions. Thank you to our sponsor, John Donovan, President, Longhorn Wealth Management Group. As a proud UT alum, John has served for 15 years as a Dallas, Texas Exes board member, and he encourages everyone going to the game this Saturday to attend the tailgate the Texas Exes are hosting. John has earned the 5-star wealth manager designation by 5-star professionals, and he wants to offer that expertise to you all in a free 90-minute private consultation to help you explore how you may be able to best enhance your own financial future. Call John and the Longhorn Wealth Team, 972-707-4900, or go online, www.longhornwealth.net, to schedule your free private consultation today. John says, hook 'em. All right, Jerry, this one
Hey,
from...
can I bring one up? Oh, okay. Yeah, can I can't find the question, but somebody asked, has Texas really been tested this season? And I just want to respond to that. Offensively, Texas has been tested by Michigan, which I do think that helps Texas coming into this Oklahoma game. Defensively, Texas hasn't really been tested by a NFL level quarterback that has a really good offensive line, NFL running backs, and multiple guys on the perimeter that will play in the NFL, even if they're not true difference makers. But that's not happening this week. That's next week. So Texas defensively hasn't been tested. I mean, UL Monroe's 4-1, but they replaced their starter. Colorado State, he's all right. You had a first-time starter against Mississippi State. They haven't played a high-level offense yet, and so they have not. Texas hasn't been truly tested defensively. They've passed the tests that have been put in front of them. The offense has been tested against Michigan, and I do think that helps them Saturday.
Jay Nahr says, just a reminder, it's 7:56. I'll change that to 8:02. And OU still sucks. There you go, Jay. I agree completely. Cameron Miller, is Texas's offense better than last year? What about the defense? I think the offense is slightly better because Quinn is a year older. I think that the offensive line is a year older, and the skill position is not that much difference. That's the bottom line. More speed on this team overall than a year ago, I think, plays into Sark's game plan, Jerry.
Yeah, I think offensively they are better because there's just so much speed. And it's scary to think about what this team would look like with Cedric Baxter, by the way, offensively. Scary. But I think offensively, because so much speed at wide receiver and Gunnar Helm's emergence as a hurdler / tight end, I think Texas is, Ben Quinn being year 3, is better offensively. And look, offensive line-wise, they're just an older, experienced group right now. Big couple of games coming up for Cam Williams, by the way. If he plays well the next 2 weeks, he is going to continue to rise up draft boards. Big couple of weeks for him coming up. But I think they're better offensively because of all the speed. Just so much speed everywhere. Multiple playmakers at wide receiver, strong offensive line. Defensively, I think they have more impact guys in the front 7 than Texas has had in a long time. Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons. Barron Sorrell is playing such a consistent brand of football. Are they? And I think they have better connectivity from back to front, better communication. Are they for sure better defensively? I'm not sure I can say that yet because they just haven't played that team where you're like where Texas offense played against the Michigan defense. You can literally say, yeah, they were just as fast as we thought they were. Even Michigan had issues. Texas offensive line, They did very well against the Michigan front 4, who all those guys will be drafted. You can say it about the offense. Defensively, you're still got, as much as you like what you've seen, you're still waiting to say, okay, now if they go out and play really well against Georgia next week, then you might have a different opinion.
I think the offense is slightly better. I think the defense is not as good against the run, but better against the pass. I think it's just a totally different defense. I don't know that you can truly determine yet where they're at on defense. I think that they're going to be very similar overall over final stats. I think they'll have less yards passing against them and more yards running this year. Yeah. I just feel like that's the way it looks like to me, Cameron. I think it's almost a push because they are better in the secondary, but not as good up the middle right now. Ryan Nelson, Bobby, what do you think about 2-sport athletes in 2024? If you're talking about high school players going to college, I love it. I want 3-sport athletes, 4-sport athletes. I think the more sports you play as a top line athlete in high school, the better. I really believe that, and I've always believed that. As far as college, and you're talking about Jonah Williams maybe here going to play baseball, I think it becomes really, really difficult when it's a refined sport. It's one thing when and I want to say this the right way because Jamal Charles ran the 100 and ran hurdles at Texas, right, Jerry?
Yeah.
Those are different,
Right.
because it's not day in, day out practice of the same variety. It's not a skills-based practice. It's more of a training practice. So a little bit different. I'm mixed on it, but I don't think you get Jonah Williams unless you'd let him do it. And so I think he's a star player. And so I would absolutely let him do it. Justin Yarbrough, specials teams was big last year in this game. We need another big game from them again. Jerry, any shot of talking Coach Anderson, Jermaine Anderson, into coming on the show? Great guy and great coach, former Longhorn Jermaine Anderson. You said the defensive coordinator at Texas City these days.
I have him for a few years. Yeah, we can. I'll work on getting him on the show. I think he would definitely jump on. By the way, and I know Justin Yarbrough is a Texas City guy. He knows this, but those that haven't followed along, Irvis Hill's son is a freshman point guard at Clear Springs there in the near Friendswood in that area by north of Dickinson. Is one of the top 2 or 3 rated freshman point guards in America, not the state of Texas, America.
For those unfamiliar with the names, Jermaine Anderson or Irvis Hill, in Mac Brown's very first recruiting class, he took 4 guys from Texas City. They were known as the Texas City 4. They had won the state championship that year. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think Rusty Dowling was the coach down there when they did it. And Jermaine Anderson was a defensive end. Everett Rawls was a cornerback. Tyrone Jones was a linebacker. And who am I missing?
Irvis Hill's a corner. Rawls was in Jones.
Everett Rawls was also a linebacker.
Yeah.
They had 4 guys that all 4 of them at one point or another ended up starting at the University of Texas. So good stuff. And that's a good one. All right. Last but not least, here we go. This one from Sam Mitchell. Can we really finish undefeated? Only if they win on Saturday.
By the way, people are saying Deion Burks is officially out. I don't know if that's been announced. So there's rumors. I don't know. That's what they're saying in the chat. But if that, there are rumors that Deion Burks may be out for a while. By the way, so we'll see what happens with that. Now, could Oklahoma be playing games? I don't know. I think these teams are prepared nowadays. They have 78,000 guys doing analytics and film breakdown and everything else. But yeah, that's interesting. If that's
true. I can't confirm that, but thank you for posting. We'll look that up.
On the undefeated, I just didn't have time. I didn't have the time to look it up because obviously I've been on the road. I wanted to, but how many undefeated seasons did Nick Saban have in the SEC?
Not many, man.
Best run we've ever seen in college football. Yeah, it's tough.
Yep. All right. That's going to do it for tonight's Talkin' Ball. Thanks again to our sponsor, LonghornWealth.net. Thanks to Jerry Hamilton and our producer, Matt Hutchison. But most of all, thanks to all of you for joining us and all the questions and comments. You kept the chat humming today, allowed us to get some good questions and comments about the OU game. Thank you very much. I want to mention also we are now selling On Texas Football gear and merchandise right now. I'm wearing it. Jerry's wearing it. We got the black hat, the gray hat, white. We also have a mug if you enjoy coffee and football with us every morning, weekday morning. It's at shop.ontexasfootball.com. shop.ontexasfootball.com. We're getting those right out to people as soon as they order. Thank you all so much for those that have ordered them. All right, Jerry, you have one more thing?
Don't forget, for every hat sold, Colt Monroe does a $1.99 super chat.
All right, guys. Y'all have a good one tonight. Enjoy the rest of the Monday Night Football game. Thanks for joining us here at On Texas Football. Hook 'em.